Are you prepared to find out what waits beyond reality? It's time to plunge into the abyss from which there is no return. In the silence broken only by your own heartbeat, darkness and horrors capable of shocking even the bravest lie in wait. Are you ready to face what hides in the shadows? What dark force pierces the silence? And what happens when every rustle becomes a cry of despair? Can you withstand the intense fear that becomes palpable and overwhelming? What if something around the corner can shatter your reality? In this world, every step brings you closer to the unknown horror, and every breath is a harbinger of unimaginable evil. Hold on tight and don't look away. The darkness will consume you.
On a rainy evening, as the city was swallowed by impenetrable darkness, and the skies, shattered by anger, unleashed their ominous precipitation upon the world, 30-year-old writer Jack ventured to the edge of the ocean. The roiling ocean roared like a demonic beast, tearing everything in its path. The wind howled, and the rain drummed on the roofs as Jack, drawn by an inexplicable urge, decided to stroll along the shore, breathing in the cold, salt-tinged air of darkness. His steps left deep impressions in the wet sand as he moved towards the rocky cliff, where the sea, like a mad creature, cast mud and foam, tearing the silence apart. Suddenly, his attention was caught by a strange object partially buried in the sand. An old glass bottle with a blackened, charred cork, looking as though it had survived centuries filled with darkness and fear. The bottle was coated in a thick layer of sea salt and dust, as if it had sealed an entire dimension of horror and dread. Despite a growing sense of unease, Jack couldn't tear his eyes away from this eerie find. He carefully extracted the bottle from the sand, feeling as if every movement drew the hostile gaze of unseen eyes. Inside the bottle was a yellowed piece of paper, rolled into a tight scroll, reminiscent of an ancient parchment, soaked in a sinister atmosphere. His hands trembled with excitement and fear as he cautiously removed the cork, afraid that the fragile find might crumble. As he pulled out the note, strange symbols and ink on it began to move and shimmer as if they were alive. "Help me. Time is running out. I am trapped here. Fear has consumed everything. Find me before it's too late. They are watching you." Jack, shaken by the peculiar mix of fear and curiosity, carefully unrolled the yellowed paper. His eyes traced the symbols that seemed alive, as if they were not just ink, but part of some malevolent spell. Why were these symbols moving? What ancient forces were bound in this cursed scroll? Why did the mention of time in the note feel so urgent? He tried to convince himself that it was just a cruel joke or part of an adventure quest. But the fear that seeped into his mind wouldn't release him. He stuffed the note into his pocket and, believing he could handle it, went home, unaware that his life had just spiraled into a whirlwind of unexplored horror. That night, as he lay down to sleep, he was awoken by a dull thud coming from the neighboring room. At first, it sounded like someone was trying to knock on the door, but soon the noise became eerie and monotonous, as if something invisible was trying to break free. Why did this ominous knocking never cease? What exactly is trying to escape from the darkness? Waking up in a panic, Jack found his room engulfed in thick darkness, as if the house itself was trying to swallow him. In the gloom, his eyes noticed shadows on the walls, writhing and dancing as if the walls had come alive and were living their dreadful existence. Suddenly, cold, sticky moisture burst through the window, seeping through the cracks, and he felt icy fingers of an invisible entity touching his skin, leaving behind a sensation of terror that could be called frozen fear. Why did this awful cold feel so real? What sinister creature leaves such marks on his body? The next morning, Jack discovered that the note was gone. In its place, on the floor where it had lain, was an old, worn photograph depicting an abandoned house, shrouded in thick fog emanating a sinister aura. The photograph was covered in black stains and smudged streaks, as if it had endured a hellish trial of time and evil. Why did this photograph look as if it embodied evil itself? What hidden significance does the address, "The house at the edge of the forest," hold? Jack, gripped by inexplicable fear and anxiety, gathered himself and set out for the address mentioned. A sense of impending evil grew in his heart. As he approached the house, his fears intensified. The abandoned house looked as if it had been left many years ago, now serving as a haven for unknown evil. Its windows were black sockets, absorbing light and carrying away the remnants of hope. The house itself seemed alive and grim, as if warning of impending evil, with every creak sounding like a call to madness. Dreadful secrets lie behind these walls. Why does the house seem so alive? When Jack entered the house, he was met with an all-consuming darkness, as if the house itself was trying to swallow him. He turned on his flashlight, and the beam revealed cracked walls covered in mold, from which strange, ominous figures emerged. Why do the walls look as though they have endured hell themselves? In the corner of the room, he noticed strange marks on the floor, resembling bloody trails left by some dreadful creature. These trails twisted across the floor, leading to doors sealed with sinister seals. Why do these trails lead to sealed doors? What horror lies behind them? The air was thick with a stench of decay that seemed to penetrate the depths of his mind. With every step, Jack felt the darkness pressing on him, as if an invisible force was trying to stop him. Suddenly, he heard whispers emanating from the walls, distorted and malevolent, as if they were the spawn of darkness itself. Why do these voices sound like they come from the very abyss of hell? Why does the staircase to the basement lead to absolute darkness? In the basement, Jack found an old wooden chest, emitting a sinister light. When he opened the chest, his eyes were met with horror. Inside lay another bottle, the very one he had found on the beach, but now filled with black, viscous liquid, hissing and bubbling like poisonous saliva. Why was this bottle back in the chest? What dreadful liquid is inside? The cork emitted a sharp, piercing smell that seemed to embody the deepest fears, from which there was no escape. The light from the chest seemed alive and sinister, penetrating every pore, tearing his mind apart. What horror is hidden behind this light? Why does it grow more menacing? As Jack tried to examine the contents, a horrifying light burst from the darkness, and he saw something shadowed and shape-shifting, crawling across the corners of the room. A creature with burning red eyes and writhing limbs approached him, making dreadful, inhuman noises. Why does this creature look so sinister? What is its true purpose? Its movements were hostile and unpredictable, and each step left traces of ominous darkness. Jack felt his mind tearing apart with terror, and fear seeping into every cell of his body, making him think he had become part of a malevolent ritual that would never end. Why does this ritual seem so evil and endless? In horror, Jack threw the bottle away and fled from the basement. But the fear didn't leave him. On his way home, he was haunted by visions, the darkness living in his imagination, and scenes from the basement replaying over and over like a torturous horror film. Why do his visions become increasingly tormenting? Each night, he was plagued by nightmares, hearing the voice of the note uttering the words, "Help me, time is running out." Strange sounds began to appear in his home, creaks, thumps, and rustlings coming from places where there should be nothing alive. These sounds grew more insistent and sinister, as if the house itself was trying to become a living entity and devour his soul. How are these sounds connected to the curse? Why do they become more intense and eerie? Jack could no longer ignore what was happening. He returned to the house, hoping to find answers. But when he opened the doors, the house was filled with a thick, dense fog that moved as if it were a living entity. Why does the fog move as if it has its own will? The walls began to squeeze and twist, as if they were living creatures, distorting the space around him. In the center of the room, in the very spot where he had found the chest, stood an ancient woman with ghastly dark eyes, gleaming with harshness and evil. Why do her eyes look so sinister and terrifying? She looked at Jack, and her eyes were filled with an ominous light, as if they themselves were embodiments of darkness. She spoke words he would never forget. "You found my note. Now you must become part of this story. Help me, or you will be next." Her voice sounded like a whisper from the deepest depths of hell, and her words were laced with a deadly threat. How could Jack escape this horror? Why did he end up in this terrifying place? And how can he avoid his fate? The room engulfed Jack, and he vanished into the dark abyss, which swallowed him as a new victim. His scream dissolved into the fog, leaving behind only a sinister trail, and the sound of his fear faded into the void. Now he was part of the darkness he had so diligently tried to understand, and his fate became part of the malevolent cycle that would never end. He vanished into that darkness, forever lost in the maze of fear and horror. What fate awaits the next person who dares to unravel this mystery? Now, when someone finds that very bottle with the note, they face the same horrifying fate. Darkness and fear live in the abandoned house, and anyone who dares to seek answers will find that the ancient darkness sealed in the bottle is waiting for its next victim. Every night, as the moon rises over the forest and the wind whispers through the twisted leaves, one can hear the echo of fear and warnings left by Jack, understanding that the evil spirit is still seeking new ways for revenge. Every new seeker who dares to unravel this mystery must remember, sometimes it's better not to know what lies behind the veil of darkness.
Why did you hurt them?